There's a phrase some people say constantly, almost unconsciously. It slips out dozens of times a day in situations where no apology is needed. No harm was done. No mistake was made. Yet they say it anyway. Sorry. Sorry for speaking. Sorry for existing in a space. Sorry for having a need. Sorry for taking up time. Sorry for being seen. And here's what's strange. They're not actually apologizing for something they did. They're apologizing for something they are. They're apologizing for existing. Maybe you're one of them. Maybe you say sorry when someone bumps into you, when you ask a question, when you express an opinion, when you simply are. And if you are, this video will explain why. Because apologizing for existing isn't politeness. It's a wound that learned to speak.
So where does this come from? Why do some people learn to apologize for their very existence? It starts in childhood, not always with overt abuse. Sometimes it's subtler. It's the child who learned that their presence was inconvenient, that their needs were burdensome, that taking up space, emotional, physical, conversational, was somehow wrong. Maybe they had a parent who was always stressed, always overwhelmed, and the child learned, if I'm quiet, if I'm small, if I don't ask for anything, things are easier. I cause less problems. I'm less of a burden. Or maybe they had siblings who demanded more attention, and this child learned, my needs come last. My voice matters least. If I speak up, I'm being difficult. So they developed a strategy. Apologize first. Apologize before you're told you're wrong. Apologize for existing so loudly that maybe they'll let you stay. And it worked. The apologies kept them safe, kept them from being too much, kept them from being rejected. But what started as survival became identity. The child who apologized for existing became the adult who still does.
Here's how it shows up in adulthood. Pattern 1. Preemptive apologies. They apologize before they've done anything. Sorry, can I ask you something? Sorry to bother you. Sorry, this might be a stupid question. They're apologizing for the possibility of being inconvenient, for the potential of being too much. Pattern 2. Apologizing for feelings. Sorry, I'm upset. Sorry for crying. Sorry, I'm not fun right now. As if their emotions are an imposition, as if having a human response requires permission and pardon. Pattern 3. Spatial apologies. Someone bumps into them, they say sorry. Someone steps on their foot, they apologize. They're walking down the street and someone's in their path, they're the ones who move and say sorry. They've learned that their physical presence is an inconvenience to be minimized. Pattern 4. Existence apologies. This is the deepest one. Sorry for taking up your time. Sorry for existing in your space. Sorry, I need things. They're not apologizing for what they did. They're apologizing for what they are. A person with needs, with presence, with a right to be here.
And here's what this does to a person over time. It erases them, slowly, quietly. They become a ghost in their own life. Because when you spend decades apologizing for existing, you start to believe you shouldn't. They don't advocate for themselves, not at work, not in relationships, not anywhere, because asking for what they need feels like inflicting harm. So they don't ask. They suffer quietly. They burn out silently. They disappear gradually. Their relationships become one-sided. They give endlessly but can't receive, because receiving feels like burdening. When someone offers help, they refuse. When someone shows care, they deflect. Oh, you don't have to. I'm fine. Sorry for making you worry. And here's the cruelest part. People start treating them the way they treat themselves. When you constantly apologize for existing, others begin to agree. They start seeing your needs as inconvenient, your presence as optional, your voice as interruptive. The apology that was meant to keep them safe ends up confirming their deepest fear, that they were right to apologize, that they are, in fact, too much.
Psychologists have a term for this: maladaptive guilt. It's guilt that doesn't match reality, guilt for things that don't warrant it, guilt that's become a reflex rather than a response. It often stems from childhood emotional neglect or invalidation. When a child's needs are consistently treated as burdensome, they internalize that message. They learn, I am the problem. My existence is the issue. If I apologize enough, maybe I can make up for the inconvenience of being alive. This creates what researchers call a self-effacing pattern. The person systematically minimizes their own importance, their own needs, their own right to space. It's a form of psychological self-protection that becomes self-destruction. Studies show that people who chronically over-apologize score higher in anxiety, lower in self-worth, and have difficulty forming secure attachments. Because you can't build intimacy with someone who's constantly apologizing for being there. But here's what's important to understand. This isn't weakness. This isn't lack of confidence. This is an adaptation to an environment that punished existence. The child who learned to apologize for living didn't do it because they were broken. They did it because it kept them safe.
So, when someone constantly apologizes for existing, what are they really saying? They're saying, I learned that my presence is conditional, that I have to earn my right to be here, that existing without apology is too risky. They're saying, I was taught that my needs are impositions, that wanting something is selfish, that being seen is demanding too much. They're saying, someone somewhere made me feel like I was too much, and I've spent my whole life trying to be less loud, less needy, less visible, less real. But here's the truth they never learned. Existence doesn't require apology. You don't have to earn the right to take up space. You don't have to justify having needs. You don't have to apologize for being human. The word sorry is meant for harm caused, mistakes made, boundaries crossed. It's not meant for breathing, for speaking, for existing. And using it that way, that's not politeness. That's self-erasure.
So if you're someone who apologizes for existing, if sorry is the first word out of your mouth in almost every interaction, if you've spent your whole life trying to be small enough that nobody notices you're there, I need you to hear this. You don't owe anyone an apology for being alive. The people who made you feel like you did, they were wrong. The environment that taught you to minimize yourself, it was broken, not you. You're allowed to speak without apologizing first. You're allowed to have needs without calling them burdens. You're allowed to take up space without justifying why you're there. You're allowed to exist loudly, fully, unapologetically. This doesn't mean becoming rude or inconsiderate. It means saving sorry for when it actually means something, for when you've genuinely caused harm, not for when you've simply existed. The child who learned to apologize for living deserves to finally hear, you were never the problem. You were never too much. You were never an inconvenience that needed to be managed through constant apology. You were always allowed to be here, and you still are. The only person you need permission from to stop apologizing is yourself. You can put down the apology now. It's kept you safe long enough, but you don't need it anymore. You're allowed to just be.